Hey, good morning and welcome back to Question in Scent with me, Matt. Okay, today I'm going to be talking about a fragrance that's very important to me, and it's quite an important fragrance I think in general, and it's going to be quite a wordy review, so please bear with us. I was on Facebook a couple of weeks, well, about a week ago in one of my fragrance groups, so no surprises there, and something came up in conversation which I thought was really interesting. Someone had asked which fragrance we thought on the market today offered the best value. Now, really interesting subject, obviously, because it's something that, you know, we're all looking at. Now, there were lots of really good suggestions on there, and lots of good, healthy debate about fragrances in general. And what I liked about this is it's quite a broad spectrum. You're looking at fragrances that were cheap, you're looking at fragrances that weren't so cheap but had great performance, some that people really love for various reasons. So there were lots and lots of great ideas and suggestions. Mine, the one that I came up with was this, which is Halston Z14. Now, the reason that I brought this up, because of the cost of it at the moment, its performance and stuff like that. But the most important thing for me about Halston Z14 is its historical impact on fragrance in general. And it's got quite an exciting backstory. Now, I don't know if you're going to be familiar with it or not. I'm pretty sure that sort of viewers from the States will certainly know a lot more about it than us in the UK, because it never really sort of took off that massively here for some reason, and I don't know why, when you look at some of the other fragrances that came out around the same time as Z14, which are very much, very well known in the UK. So to do this justice, we have to go back to 1974, when Roy Halston Frerick, or Halston as his name, he was just known as Halston, released this onto the market in '74. Really interesting time. Halston was kind of based in New York at the time. New York in the early to middle, well, all the way through from the 70s to the 80s was a really fascinating place. Lots going on, lots of crazy characters, lots of interesting people, lots of mad stuff going on. Halston, at one point, well, most of his career, was the sort of premier American fashion designer. Ladies' clothing primarily, and then obviously fragrance as well. Halston made a name for himself for very minimalistic, simplistic female fashion, and I think he did some work with hats as well. So very interesting character there. And because of his sort of status as a legendary fashion designer, he was surrounded by the well-heeled, the beautiful, the interesting, the talented people of the day, especially in New York, and he became very good friends with many of these people. A really good friendship with the one and only Andy Warhol, who doesn't really need any introduction. Now, it's interesting because at the time in New York, there was a really kind of underground nightclub scene that was bursting out. And the focal point of that has to have been Studio 54. Now, Warhol said that Halston Z14 was the smell of Studio 54, so that's amazing stuff. I've read quite a lot about Studio 54, even though obviously I'm quite old, but I was never old enough to have been there in its heyday. So some of the tales that you read about it are quite mind-boggling. Some of the things that people got up to in there. I mean, you've got to understand that New York at that time was quite a dangerous place as well. So there were lots of people that, if they could get into Studio 54, because it was quite an exclusive place, it was a real safe haven where they could do whatever they wanted. Disco was blossoming, there was a real hedonistic time. Sort of, anything and everything that could possibly happen in a nightclub was happening in there. And everyone smelt of this stuff, which is amazing. The other thing about Halston Z14 is it spawned a whole genre of fragrance that kind of came out after it. And if you look at, I'm just going to have to put the old bins on again. So if you look at the people behind Z14, it was Vincent Marcello and Max Gavari. They really, they worked with Halston on Z14, and as I say, it was released in '74. These are quite important people. Vincent Marcello went to work for Karen after, and in '78, Yatan was released, another powerhouse, another really famous scent from back in the day. Max Gavari went on to work for Anthony Puig, or Puig, huge. And with Carlos Benaim and Rosendo Matau made Quorum, which, you know, Quorum and Yutan are still available today, same as Z14, so they've all stood the test of time. Interestingly, Benaim then in 1978, Carlos Benaim worked with Ralph Lauren to make Polo Green. Now, that came out in 78, so some 4 years after Z14 had been on the market. Why is this interesting? Well, they all kind of smell a bit the same. They're all green-based fougères, which I think this is probably the master of. Now, Polo Green is quite special to me because when I was a young man, I wore it constantly. It was my signature scent, although I didn't know the term signature scent in those days. I wore it all the time, long before I'd ever heard of Z14. I didn't know, you know, anything about it when I was wearing Polo Green, and I love Polo Green. I don't have it anymore for a variety of reasons. I think, you know, going back to something that you used to love could only lead to possibly, well, not only, but could possibly lead to, you know, being disappointed with how it is now, because it would have changed in the same way this has. I mean, any fragrance that's been around since 74 has got to have undergone some major changes to how it is today. But what we're going to do for the purposes of this review, I'm only going to talk about the Z14 you can buy now. I am not one of these people that looks for old and vintage fragrances. I think with the addictive sort of personality I've got, that's the last thing I need is yet another hobby. I can imagine that being a particularly expensive, frustrating and time-consuming rabbit hole to fall down. So I'm going to stick with the current version of it, which you can all buy today. So if we look at the notes on this, what you've got at the top, you have cypress, gardenia and green notes with basil, bergamot and lemon. And in the middle you have coriander, patchouli, cinnamon, jasmine, vetiver and cedar. And then on the base you have leather, tonka bean, amber, musk, benzoin and oak moss. Now obviously we know oak moss is going to be completely different to how it was back in the day. When you read reviews of the original formulation of Z14, it was a real big monster, a real beast. This, in its current formulation, is not. I mean, I'll give it a little spray now, as per normal, so we know exactly what we're talking about. It's just lovely. I cannot fault this fragrance. It's a real green fougere, just wonderful. It really does remind me so much of my memory of Polo Green. So you've got, it's just this massive cypress woody opening with the green notes. The cinnamon is prominent. A lot of people complain about the cinnamon in this. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think the cinnamon actually adds to it. It is quite herby. You've definitely got the herbal notes coming through with the greenness. There's a little bit earthy. The vetiver is quite prominent as well, but it smells clean. Now, Rich, my partner in crime for questioning scents, when I first got this, I could not stop raving about it. So again, I recommended Rich buy it. So he blind bought a bottle. And although he likes it, he finds it a little too soapy for him. He doesn't really get on with it. It's too dated for him. I personally don't think it is that dated. I think this is as relevant now. Well, maybe not as relevant as it was in the beginning, because in the beginning this was new, this was fresh, this was exciting. There was nothing else like it on the market. And as I say, it spawned a whole generation, or a whole wave of these kind of powerhouse fougères that didn't really exist before it. So it was quite revolutionary. It's not anymore, purely because you have so many other scents that have mimicked it over the years. I'll tell you what else this does remind me of is Tom Ford's Italian Cypress. Now, Halston being such an iconic fashion designer, with this fragrance in the background, Tom Ford must have been aware of it, and Tom Ford must have smelt this at some point, especially prior to making Italian Cypress. So I don't know for sure, but this must have influenced Italian Cypress, because again, they do smell quite similar. Italian Cypress is a lot more refined than this. This is still quite brutish. It's a bit rough and it's a bit ready, but it's really, really good. It's something that I wear a lot. This is a 125ml bottle, so there's quite a big dent in that. So I certainly do wear it a lot. One of the other things I just wanted to kind of think about was The popularity of this fragrance back in 1974 is quite amazing, especially when you think back in the 70s there would have been an advertising campaign that goes with it, of course, but there's no internet, there's no, you know, big sort of hoo-ha on Facebook or anything like that. It's, you know, it was bought and it was popular because it smelled good, and I think that's something that should always be applauded. Now, if you look at the bottle, I don't think this has actually changed much, if at all, throughout its existence. So it's quite unique. I really like it. It's cool. It's like a squashed bean. You've got a big grip in there as well. And the cap comes off. Obviously, it comes off. But its cap's actually plastic. I think maybe at some point it wasn't, but it would have been nice if this was made of something else. But it's a really good scent. What I like about it is performance-wise, it's not what it was. It's not a powerhouse by any means. It's it opens quite loudly, and I get a good 6 or 7 hours out of it. Slightly more than a skin scent, and then it kind of fades off. It does make you feel clean. It's very masculine. It's a brave woman that wants to wear that because it does smell quite blokey, but in a good way. It's a nice scent, and it's perfect for the office. Perfect for evenings out, it's perfect for work, it's perfect for... I can't think of anywhere where this wouldn't be appropriate to wear. So really, really good stuff. As I say, it's not a powerhouse, it's not what it was, and obviously, you know, it's been reformed a 1,000 times since it came out, so it's going to be completely different, or certainly very different to, you know, any of the vintage ones that you can find. But this isn't bad. And when it comes to price, this is an amazing value. I think I paid £17 for this, and that's 125 ml, so that's a really big bottle. Anyway, safe to blind buy? Probably not. If you like polo green, if you like Italian cypress, if you like any of those sort of greeny fougere type scents, yeah, then it's going to be a safe blind buy. I can't say enough good things about it, and I really recommend you try it. So give it a go. Thanks very much for your time, and we will see you soon. Bye.